Good Tuesday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Browns getting ready for their second preseason game Friday against the Washington Commanders. Maurice Jones-Drew on the NFL Network from NFL Total Access on what he thinks we'll see from Deshaun Watson. And will we see the guy we saw a few years ago in Houston?
I think you do, and I think you see it in spurts, right? It's not about being the guy that he was in Houston, because he was everything in Houston. Like, it was him, D-Hop. They threw the ball all over the yard. Every play they were throwing the ball. You're not going to see that. The word we heard here today was balance. We want to be in balance offense. We want to be able to run 50-50, run the ball, throw on the ball. And that's going to unlock a lot of different things for Deshaun Watson, because imagine play-action pass. Imagine the ability to be able to get back on your 7-step off a play-action pass with Nick Chubb, and then be able to throw it down the field to Amari Cooper or Elijah Moore. So you're going to have some different things here. Then you're going to still have the off-schedule playmaking ability of Deshaun Watson when things break down, the ability to run. And so I think, again, being able to take a little bit off his plate, but still open up the offense is going to be huge for his growth as well as his team's growth this year.
And with that, let's welcome in Quincy Carrier, Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Quincy, I don't know if it's going to be 50-50 pass and run, but they're not going to completely abandon the run with Nick Chubb in the backfield and that offensive line.
Absolutely not. Nobody really ever abandons the run, especially when you have a lead, right? And that's what the hope is for this team, is that the offense is good enough to score early. The defense is good enough to maintain this thing. I know it's difficult for us to remember, but there's this thing called a lead in a football game you get when your defense stops the other team from scoring and you accumulate points on the offensive side of the ball. And when you have this thing that they call a lead, you can run the ball because that lengthens your drives and allows the team that's behind less time to score. So hopefully the Browns are in position to run Nick Chubb a lot because they have a lot of leads. And they have Deshaun Watson there in case they need to throw the ball to get more points, or to move the ball a little bit quicker, be more explosive. So I don't know if it's going to be 50-50. Nobody's really 50-50. The Browns last year weren't 50-50. They were like 55-45. So it's probably going to be closer to that, 55-45 or 60-40 split with Nick Chubb taking most of the carries. But that's fine because also this offensive line and Nick Chubb are taking those carries. So that's a pretty good thing.
So this is from Warren Sharp, Sharp Football Analysis. Since 2000, TD passes in the first 20 starts. Number one is Patrick Mahomes with 60. Significantly behind him, Justin Herbert with 44. Tony Romo, one behind him with 42. And in fourth place, Deshaun Watson with 42. Romo had 43. I think I said 42, but he had 43. People tend to forget just how good this guy was his first few years in the league.
Yeah, he was really good. I mean, like, if you look at the rise of Justin Herbert, that was very similar to where Deshaun Watson was. It's also another illustration of that Pat Mahomes is just like the Jordan of football at this point, because 60 and Deshaun is fourth at 42, 18 left. That's a whole season's worth of touchdown. You know, the Steelers had 12 touchdown passes last year. Pat Mahomes, the difference, 18. So I don't even think the Browns got like the 19 touchdown passes. So that's a lot for Pat Mahomes. But also it tells you, if you wherever you think of Justin Herbert, wherever you think of Joe Burrow, Deshaun Watson was in that conversation right there with him. He was never going to be he was never Pat Mahomes was Pat Mahomes broke out, but he was in that conversation of who is the other up and coming guys coming up that aren't Pat. I mean, he was definitely in that conversation.
So this one's from CBSSports.com. 9 players making the biggest waves at NFL training camps. And among them, Austin Watkins, pushing for a spot on the Browns. Fresh off his go-ahead touchdown to help lift Cleveland over the Jets in the Hall of Fame game, Austin Watkins continues to make plays in Browns training camp. And Quincy, I said when they brought him in, I don't know if he has a chance to make it. He's probably playing his way into a spot where he may force him to put him on the practice squad. He may be able to find a way if Marquise Goodwin can't go. He's on the back end of that roster possibility right now.
Yeah, the best thing for somebody like Austin Watkins is that he's forcing people to pay attention to him, right? And the more attention that he gets and the better he plays, that's going to bode better for him. Now, I can't guarantee whether that's going to be the opportunity is going to be in Cleveland, but there will be an opportunity for him the better he plays because more people paying attention means more people are going to see you hit the waiver wire if you do get cut and then want to bring you onto their 53. So he's had a great camp. He's at a camp that's made you have to notice him. We weren't talking about 80 in the offseason, but now we're talking about 80 a lot, and that has to do with the attention that he's been able to grab because of his great play.
So I know you've addressed this on your show. Do you think Cedric Tillman has been another guy that's played really well? Do you think he's getting ready to take Donovan Peoples-Jones' job?
Only if you look at it through like a binary one receiver, two receiver kind of split. In theory, these things are just rooms, right? And each room, each player in the room has their own spot that they play or their own role that they play. And Cedric Tillman and DPJ don't play similar roles at all. They could if you wanted them to, but DPJ is more of a, precise route runner, kind of a physical body him out guy, a really crafty guy when it comes to finding out and feeling out spots and zones. Where Cedric Tillman is somebody you want to have more on if you are anticipating man coverage because he's really fast, he's physical, and he can get over top of guys if he gets one-on-one coverage. So while the body type could be the same, the play styles are very different. Cedric Tillman is somebody you want to have on man coverage, and then Donovan Peoples-Jones is somebody you're really going to go to a lot if you feel like they're clouding or playing a lot of zone coverage because he's really good at finding those spots for the quarterback to get to while also being considerate of the passing lanes.
So yesterday, Jerome Ford, running back 2 for the Browns, had to leave practice, hamstring injury. Browns have the day off, but we do find out from Mary Kay Cabot that Ford will be expected to miss some time, and it sounds like it's weeks. We'll get into Kareem Hunt a little bit later, but week 1 is in jeopardy now for Jerome Ford, so not sure he's going to be ready to go. The reason I say about Kareem Hunt's going to be visiting with the Saints, but how concerned are you with RB2?
Not really. It's not really that big of a concern. We also have one of the better offensive lines in football. And when you have that good of an offensive line, especially as good as this team's been at run blocking, you can plug in and give guys who aren't big names opportunities there because you don't need a running back to be great. You just need a running back to do what they're supposed to do. And I would fully expect, hey, if Jerome Ford can't go, John Kelly will be in there to replace him because John Kelly's been with this team for 3 years, knows the playbooks, knows exactly where he needs to go on what plays, and knows where he needs to be. They don't have to teach any of that to anybody new, and there's no reason to go and grab for somebody who has greater potential. 1, when Nick Chubb is your starter, and 2, when your offensive line is good enough to carry a number 2 running back, as long as they know where to go. You want somebody with familiarity more than you want somebody with name recognition.
So I mentioned Kareem Hunt. New Orleans Saints are expected to sign both Kareem Hunt and linebacker Anthony Barr if the players pass their physicals and are in shape. That's according to Diana Rossini. So let's take a look at the free agent running backs. These are some of the veterans. You got Elliott, you got Cook, you got Fournette. Hunt probably going to sign with the Saints. McKissick, Ingram, Rex Burkhead, Giovanni Bernard. Do you see, and I'm not necessarily concerned about the regular season. I don't think you want to play Nick Chubb a whole lot in the preseason. I don't think you want to run him a bunch. Do the Browns have enough to divvy up the running back carries between Kelly, Felton, maybe Hassan Hall, or do you bring somebody else in?
I think they'll bring in somebody, but it'll be somebody we don't know, maybe like a undrafted guy or somebody who got released recently from a team. But I don't expect it to be a big name, especially if all we're doing is expecting somebody to come in and fill out the fourth quarter of preseason games. They can do that with what they have on the roster. I think there was 47 got in like a couple of times. I don't even know his name, but he was in there. I think he scored a touchdown. So they have more than enough depth at running back. Stump Mitchell's one of the best at that in the NFL, and I think they trust Stump and what he's done with that room to just be able to roll with it, even though they lost one guy. Nick Chubb wasn't ever really going to play in the preseason, so I don't know how much this changes things. It might just divvy out more carries to Hassan Hall or one of these other guys who are struggling to make the roster right now.
So as you see it, it's more of a quote unquote camp body as opposed to somebody that you're bringing in that would legitimately contribute.
I don't know if they bring in anybody at all. But if they do, it would be just a body in camp maybe. But running back's not like quarterback, right? If you lost Kellen Mond, you would have to bring somebody to replace him because you need that extra guy there to get everybody else reps. Running back, you could just have somebody do double duty in practice. It's not like the running backs are getting hurt and then in the preseason game just give them extra carries. So that would be more of a economical solution for them when it comes to being able to keep spots open for the spots that they need to, right? Like defensive tackles one where they're probably going to have to do something pretty soon here coming up. So I don't see them sacrificing a spot for a running back when they just really don't got to.
Quincy, Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. We'll talk about some breakout players as well. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave, Frank from Cleveland. One thing I seen on Monday with Colin talking about Deshaun can't perform in the big games. He also said, if anyone backtracks, that Nick Sirianni, the coach of the Eagles, was a bad hire. I wish we could get some bad hires like that. All right, Dave, be good. Love you, brother, and be safe.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Quincy, we always talk about Colin Cowherd, and there's always something, you just kind of take it and go, okay. But it was relative to Deshaun Watson's season where he had huge stats. He was 4-12, and he completely ignored that he had two 10-win seasons the two previous seasons and was 3-3, I believe it was, his rookie year.
Yeah, Deshaun Watson, like there must be something about saying that name that makes selective amnesia more of a reoccurring issue for people who speak it, because it seems to happen a lot because people seem to forget that he was a playoff level quarterback, that he was a quarterback who led a couple of comebacks, a historic comeback, I believe, versus the Buffalo Bills in a wild card round against Josh Allen. So, you know, we forget a lot of things when it's convenient with Deshaun Watson, and you can remember, oh yeah, he had those numbers, but they were 4-12. Well, what about the other two seasons that he played in? Also, I mean, if we want to bring in a deeper look at his resume, which this is ridiculous to me, because Deshaun Watson, many criticisms you can have of him not playing in big moments. That's never been the Deshaun Watson criticism. You're talking about the guy who game-winning throw in the national championship. That's a wild one. That is a wild one.
Yeah.
That's a reach there by Colin Cowherd. But hey, he's got us talking about him in August, so good on him, right?
Well, and you also remember what Bill O'Brien did to the Texans before and during that 4-12 year. So that's fine. This is from ESPN.com. Bill Barnwell, 23 breakout players for 2023. And one of those is Martin Emerson, rotational players to solid starters. Martin Emerson finished the 2022 season a 77.6 passer rating, allowed in coverage. Jim Schwartz thrived in Philadelphia when the Eagles unexpectedly got a career season out of cornerback Patrick Robinson in the slot 2017. Emerson has to be equally valuable to the Browns to get their defense right this season. I'm not sure Emerson's going to get the opportunity to. It depends on how often they go three corners and how willing they're going to be to put different guys in the slot. It will be interesting.
Well, I mean, that's part of Jim Schwartz's job is to find a way to get the most talented players on the field in a way that makes sense for each of those players. And sometimes that could be a hard puzzle to do, but I don't think it's really going to be that difficult for him because of the different body styles and play styles that each of those corners have. It kind of allows you to put all three of them on the field at the same time, right? Denzel and Greg are more finesse corners, and then Martin Emerson is somebody you would want to have inside anyway, want to have on big wide receivers anyway, want to have play physical anyway. So if that's the case, then I think you have room to play all three of them the same way that teams find a way to play all three wide receivers, right? The Bengals somehow find a way to put Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, and Jamar Chase all out there. The Browns are going to find a way to put all three of those guys out there. But yeah, Martin Emerson, he's been impressive in camp, and he has a play style that will make him more impressive in camp because, again, physical, loves man coverage. He's going to make a lot of those pass breakups that are going to make you say, ooh, ah, in camp and in games. That's why I think we like him so much. And you don't really have to see him in long coverage too much in camp either. So, yeah, I think he's going to be a valuable piece to the Cleveland Browns, especially on their third down solutions, like getting off the field on third down. Martin Emerson's going to be instrumental to their ability to get off the field, and I think he's going to be a huge part of that.
Let's take a look at 53-man roster breakdown. This is going to be the defensive side of the ball first. And when you look at it, the green, and this is from Jack Duff in Orange and Brown Report, this is the depth chart roster. So the green is guys he considers locks. The yellow is bubbles. Who do you think is really fighting for a spot in that linebacker and defensive tackle room?
Everybody should be fighting for a spot in that defensive tackle room. I don't know what else you do there outside of Tomlinson. I really see a bunch of guys who might make the roster, might not. Ika's cool too. Like, he's gonna have his role there as a nose tackle. And then at linebacker, yeah, I would say Jacob Phillips probably fighting for a spot. Tony Fields probably fighting for a spot. I think those are going to be the guy, but it's really a free-for-all at defensive tackle.
All right, when we flip sides of the ball and we look at the offense, so the wide receiver room that's going to be really interesting. Who do you think survives in that room?
You know, it's always an interesting conversation when it comes to wide receivers, because wide receivers are players. There's always one wide receiver in camp that looks good, that everybody's like, oh my goodness, this guy might get playing time, he might start, and then they don't make the team, or they get on the practice squad 2 weeks later. So it's going to be kind of tough there. How many guys are they going to keep? We know they're keeping Cooper. We know they're keeping DPJ. We know they're keeping Moore, Tillman, Bell. They're going to have to keep Goodwin on the original 53 before they can designate him anywhere. So you're going to keep him in there. And then maybe one out of this group here, Woods, Grant, Schwartz, Darden. And as crazy as this sounds, it might be Anthony Schwartz out the one group, because they have too much invested in him that might get back on the team after Goodwin gets put on non-football injury or injury reserve. Yeah,
a third-round pick, so that is certainly a possibility. They may try to sneak a guy like Watkins onto the practice squad. We'll see. Take a look at this. This is really interesting. So the Baltimore Ravens today, guess who's in the building visiting with a free agent visit? It is former Browns edge rusher Jadeveon Clowney, and that is from a Ravens beat reporter. for The Athletic. So Jadeveon Clowney visiting the Ravens. Yeah, second week of camp, getting ready for the first preseason. He's still a week early. He's not going to report for another week, 10 days. We know how that works.
And it's interesting, too, because when you hear about these visits and you don't hear that a signing is imminent, usually they don't end up with signings, right? Because we did this last week with Shelby Harris, where it's like, oh, he visited, and we waited for like 3 days, nothing happened there. So I don't think he's probably going to sign there. We know that Jadeveon has very high opinions on what he should be paid, and I don't think that's changed, despite the fact that he wasn't good last year. He's still going to point to that 10 sacks or that 9 sack season he had in 2021 is where he feels like the bar should be set for himself. So he's probably going to wait this one out a little bit longer. But yeah, it would make sense that he would go to Baltimore, because if you look at that Baltimore roster right now, they don't have a single primary pass rusher on the roster, right? They got Odafe Owe, who is not necessarily somebody you would put in that role. They have David Ojabo, who they hope can grow into that role. But if you're looking for somebody who's going to lead this team in sacks, and you're looking at Jadeveon Clowney, that tells you where the Ravens are, and it's not necessarily the greatest place.
Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage and I are going to step aside, take another timeout. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little bit about defense. Sports for CLE will be back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, my name is Mikos. I'm a big fan out of Southeast Ohio. Go Browns, woof woof. My issue is right now is I believe the Browns have a serious problem with strength and conditioning coaches. I feel this team has been plagued with multiple groin injuries, hamstring injuries, lower leg injuries, ACLs, etc. I believe that the team may be strengthening too much, because too much weight can actually do damage to limbs and whatnot. And I really think that the team really needs to reevaluate their strength and conditioning routines, because the amount of injuries for this team is pretty absurd compared to the rest of the NFL. Also, this strength and conditioning team has been around since before Kevin Stefanski, and to my knowledge, and I think that it's time for a change. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Thanks.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, it does seem like there's an inordinate amount of injuries. I know Kevin Stefanski was asked about it, and they said they looked into it, and they do way more research than they let out. I don't know. If the Browns knew the answer, they'd have the, it's not like they're not looking for the answer to eliminate some of these. They're trying.
Well, I mean, and also it's just football. Like, guys are going to get injured. I don't think the Browns are that much above the league, the median, when it comes to injuries. And also, the Browns are very, how do I put this, cautious with their injury report, which means they're going to put everybody who has anything on the injury report. But most of the time, you'll see these 2-page injury reports for the Browns pop up, but then all of these players play. So they're just more transparent than other organizations are about those kind of things, because some organizations still try to go and hide them. If you look at the amount of cap reserved by the cap that is dedicated to players on injury reserve, the Browns really aren't that high in that. So I think it's one of those things where we're going to talk about it now, but I just don't know if this team's been plagued by injuries as much as people might suggest, especially when you look at a team like Baltimore. Baltimore is one of those teams that's truly plagued by injuries. And even when the NFLPA did the players vote, the players cited that it was a strength and conditioning program that was getting them injured, and that it was improper use by them. So this isn't one of those situations. I just think, a rash of injuries popped up. You just played a game. Nobody else in the NFL has played a game other than the New York Jets. And you're going to have injuries after you play your first football game of the season. And that seems to be the people who are affected are people who played in that game.
Yeah, and all the teams go through various things of injuries, and again, if there was a way to stop it, the other thing is the contact and the kind of ramp up. The rules where you ramp into it make it so that you get those kind of injuries early as well. So Alex Wright, we found out, underwent arthroscopic surgery earlier to repair that leg and the leg injury. And Wright says, I will be back soon. So let me ask you this. Do you think, now Wright is a guy that the Browns said could kick inside and kind of help out at tackle like Zadarius Smith and potentially Isaiah Thomas. Do you think the Browns go out and bring in a veteran defensive tackle? Do you think they're looking at that?
Not just because Alex Wright got hurt, just because look at the rest of the room. Like it just is what it is. If Dawand Jones goes out, who are we starting? Maurice Hurst and Jordan Elliott? That's not acceptable. Like, you can't run that out there again. We saw what doing that last year made happen for this team. That can no longer be an acceptable solution for this front office. So, yeah, they need to bring somebody in here. It's not because Alex Wright got hurt, because he was always going to be situational in his three-tech use, and he'll remain to be situational no matter who they sign or don't sign. They need to sign somebody because right now, Dave, it looks like Jordan Elliott's going to start. And that's worst case scenario for that interior. It just is. We know what he's been the last 3 years.
All right. So with all the injuries and guys banging up and getting banged up, you mentioned after the first game, do you think the starters play in the second game? Would you play the starters? And if so, how much would you play them?
They got to play football. We saw this with Deshaun Watson last year, right? At some point, you got to actually play football, or else you're going to go out there, look very rusty, waste a bunch of time. And I think there's no way to get prepared for playing football that's close like playing actual football. So they need to get out there, right? Now, are there starters who don't need to get out there? Myles Garrett don't need to be out there. Nick Chubb doesn't need to be out there. We know he's still good. Denzel Ward, because he's just always had some kind of soft tissue injury going on that's affecting his play, not necessarily keeping him out of games. He probably doesn't need to be out there. Nobody you would label as high risk needs to be out there. But yeah, I do think it's important that guys play during the preseason. I don't think that you need to play them a ton. I'm thinking maybe like 2 quarters worth of work in the whole preseason is really all you need. If you ramp it up properly, I don't expect them to get any work in next week's preseason game and probably some work in the last one. But that's what joint practices are for. So I think, yeah, you need some. You can't just sit out the whole preseason, come back in the first week and think everything's going to be cool.
So earlier in the show, we told you Kareem Hunt in New Orleans visiting the Saints, expected to sign with the Saints. Jordan Schultz says he is leaving his free agent visit with the Saints without a contract. Scheduled to visit the Colts next. Interest from a number of teams, but he will remain in contact with the New Orleans Saints. So Kareem Hunt not going to sign with the Saints just yet. It'll be interesting to see if they feel that Jerome Ford's injury is going to cost him to miss a number of regular season games. Do they go back down the Kareem Hunt path?
I just don't think there's enough carries for all of that, right, in this offense. I think part of what you're doing is allocating a lot of the old Kareem Hunt carries, and you're splitting them in more passing reps. Deshaun Watson runs, and then whatever's left for the second running back there. And let's be real here. The wide receivers are more of a priority than wide receiver 2. Deshaun Watson running the football is more of a priority than running back 2. And Nick Chubb is certainly more of a priority than running back 2. So whoever's taking that spot is going to be 5th, 6th, maybe even like 7th on the pecking order when it comes to getting the football. So it's not a role that if I were Kareem Hunt, I would be interested in, given that it's a reduced role from a reduced role that you've been taking for the last few years that seemed to bug him. And it doesn't make sense for the Browns to go after somebody that could get a decent contract at this point when you don't really need somebody that good.
So you're looking more like a guy that you can develop. You know, if Jerome, a younger guy, the next Dearness Johnson, if you will.
It could, well, Dearness Johnson on the team, but it could be John Kelly, right? It could be any number of guys that's been on this roster and this camp roster for a while that's been waiting to get a shot. That Stump feels like is ready for a shot. It could be somebody who was that guy for another team and is going to get a shot. But I expect them to go younger here and to really lean towards having guys who are familiar with this team. John Kelly's been on this team for a while. They've kept him around for a while for a reason, and he's been impressive in every camp, in every preseason game he's played in. I really wouldn't sleep on his ability to take that role if he needs to.
Yeah, you know, Kelly and Demetric Felton both looked good, so let's see what they have in store. I'm sure they'll get a lot of work against the Commanders coming up on Friday night. Quincy Carrier, Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage, and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. What does Hall of Famer LaDainian Tomlinson see when he looks at the Browns? We'll tell you on the other side of the break. Sports for CLE, be right back. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier from Untitled Unfiltered Browns coverage. LaDainian Tomlinson on NFL Network's NFL Total Access, talking about what he sees and what he thinks the Browns will be like on offense in 2023.
When you think about the core group of this football team, they're pretty experienced. I mean, they've played a lot of football. You talk about guys like Myles Garrett, you know, Denzel Ward, even Amari Cooper, Donovan Peoples-Jones, Deshaun Watson, the quarterback, obviously, Nick Chubb. We're looking at a bunch of guys who have played a lot of football. And so you should be surprised, and they're very talented at that. So now when you bring this group together and create some chemistry, Deshaun Watson having a full year of offseason, you know, going through mini camps and now training camp to build that chemistry with this football team. The defense bringing over Jim Schwartz, who's going to make it so much better for them in terms of just being opportunistic, being able to turn the football over, give their offense more possessions. All those things accumulate to wins. And I think when it comes down to it, this division, they're going to beat each other up. There's no question about that. I don't expect any team in this division to not win a game in the division, if that makes sense. They're all going to beat each other up. But I think when you look at the Browns, I just believe that they have what it takes to surprise some people and possibly give Cincinnati a run in that division.
And Quincy, I have been saying this. Closer we get to the regular season, as we go through training camp, as we go through preseason, the guys who've played the game, the guys who have coached the game, the guys who are in front offices in the NFL are the ones that look at this roster and go, yeah, they're going to be right in there.
Hey, the question with the Browns has always been about quarterback since 2018. Like, you know, we've known that Myles is really good. We've known that Denzel's pretty good. We know that, DPJ, we've recently found out that he's really good, right? Nick Chubb's been really good since 2018. These guys have been really good for a very long time. The core of this roster has been good for a very long time. What has not been consistent is quarterback play. When it has been consistent, this is a very good team. When it's been great, it's been a great team. And when it's been bad, it's been a pretty mediocre, average team in the NFL. So that's what they can do. That's what's going to be the difference for this team is quarterback. How you feel about Deshaun Watson is going to be how you feel about the Browns. If you feel like he's going to get back to 2020 form, it's going to be a really, really good team. If you feel like he's going to get back to what he was before, it's going to be a really good team. If you feel like he lost something and the Space Jam monsters took all his talent during the 700-day layoff, then yeah, you're probably not going to think this is going to be that good of a team. But if you're anywhere outside of that, you probably think it's going to be a good team.
This is really interesting. So this is from Next Gen Stats, and I want you to think about this for a minute. So it's rush yards over expected in 2022. Nick Chubb is number 1, 50 yards better than Travis Etienne. You see Tony Pollard, Khalil Herbert, and Josh Jacobs. That's running into 8, 9-man boxes sometimes with Jacoby Brissett and a little bit of Deshaun Watson. But can you imagine what his run yards over expected is going to be when the Browns spread it out in the box? Now you're facing a normal box. I am very, very curious to see how efficient his run and his average is with this offense that you figure will be able to throw the ball significantly better than it has in the past.
We're talking about efficiency with the guy who averages 5 yards to carry his whole NFL career through 5 years.
Yes.
Yeah, it's going to be pretty interesting to see. Nick Chubb's going to be put in an interesting spot here where he's going to be doing something a little bit different. But if he can make that a little adjustment, and it's kind of similar to some of the stuff he's done before, then he's going to be able to get big returns on it, especially if Deshaun plays to the level of expectation that we have him. We know this from years past. Whenever a defensive coordinator or a defensive-minded head coach plays the Cleveland Browns, they're always talking about Nick Chubb, Nick Chubb, Nick Chubb. What are we going to do about Nick Chubb? He's been the main focus of every defense that's played against him since 2019. Think about that. It's been on his back. Nobody's been worried about Baker Mayfield more. Nobody's been worried about any other person but Nick Chubb more when it comes to defensive coordinators and their game plan versus the Cleveland Browns. It's always, don't let Nick Chubb get going. What happens when Nick Chubb becomes an afterthought? He's done this while being the main focus. What happens when he becomes an afterthought? That's something that's an intriguing question to be answered this year.
All right, before I let you go, Ja'Marr Chase, the Bengals wide receiver, probably arguably one of the best wide receivers in the NFL. He came out and said shortly after Joe Burrow's injury, the calf injury, he doesn't think Burrow should play week 1 against the Browns. He was asked about it yesterday, the day before, doubled down on that comment. Listen to Ja'Marr Chase.
They were wondering, did Ja'Marr really mean that he doesn't want him to play week 1?
Yeah.
Do you have any follow-up?
100% mean that.
And is that anything to do with where Joe is now, or you just want him to play it safe?
I want him to be 100% healthy to play. I don't want him rushing nothing. I don't want people in his ear telling him to play at a certain time. I just want him to be healthy. And that's not me telling him to play that certain game. It's just, that's me saying be healthy when you're back, 100% healthy.
And you're talking about the regular season. You're not just talking about preseason?
He shouldn't see the field during preseason. So.
Would this team be okay? Do you think if he did miss time in the regular season?
Nobody wants him out. He's talking about, I mean, we'd be okay as long as he's there for the end of the season. You know what I'm saying? We worried about the bigger picture, not the small picture here. That's what we're trying to win. So, you know what I'm saying? As long as he comes in around the season that we need him, then we're going to be okay.
Your comment was just don't rush back. Don't come back too soon.
Yeah, you know, y'all always blow stuff out of proportion. That's why I gave y'all the answer.
Are you speaking from experience a little bit too? Because you could have come back, that Tennessee game last year, but you wanted to do the one extra
Exactly.
week.
I gave myself an extra game to heal. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't rush nothing. I made sure I was ready to be back, even though I felt good the week before. I just told him I didn't want to play. You know what I'm saying? Just to give myself and my body the rest that it needs. You know what I'm saying? You got to be an athlete and be on top of stuff like that.
Quincy, when you hear it, I get what he's saying, but quarterbacks tend to just want to be out there.
Yeah, but I mean, you have to give the context of who's talking, right? And this is Jamar Chase talking. And what I mean by that is look at Jamar Chase's career. Even if we don't even look at what he did last year, which people seem to be focusing on, look at what he did in college, right? He took a year off in college, basically, and then went straight to the NFL draft to preserve his body to make sure that he was in tip-top shape for the NFL, and it worked out spectacularly for him. So I can see why somebody who's had his experience would be like, hey, do not rush your body back. Do not become a shell of yourself. Also, during this time, he saw the whole Baker Mayfield implosion, which some people blamed on the labrum, right? Don't rush your body back. Don't hurt yourself in the long run just to appease some people right now. And don't fold or don't pressure him into playing early. And I think that's smart, right? If this were Deshaun Watson, if this were Nick Chubb, if this were Myles Garrett, we'd be saying the same exact stuff. We don't want him to rush back for week 1. If he's not ready, let's get him out there when he's ready. You know what I mean? I think this is pretty standard advice. I just think since he's Jamar Chase and since people are so on pins and needles down there about if Joe Burrow's going to play week 1, how serious this injury is, and the ambiguity of this injury, that people are freaking out about those comments. But I think he's saying what a lot of us would say if this were a situation for our quarterback or our best player on our team. You know, if this were Pat Mahomes, I'm pretty sure somebody would be like, hey, Pat, don't worry about being back week 1. Just make sure you're back healthy 100% so we can have you out there instead of trying to be out there at 70% and then re-injure yourself. Also, you got to look at like Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant came back early to play in the NBA Finals, ended up snapping his Achilles on what was originally reported as a calf strain. There's a lot of stuff out there that says, hey, if your calf is bugging you, and it's been bugging you because he had the sleeve on when he even hurt it, then you should probably wait until you're 100% back so you don't risk a serious injury, because right now, calf strain, missing 5 weeks, there's nothing to Joe Burrow snaps an Achilles or something because he came back too early and has to miss a calendar year before he can start practicing.
Quincy Carrier, as always, good stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Quincy.
Have a great day, man.
Quincy Carrier, make sure you check him out. Untitled, unfiltered Browns coverage, always really good stuff. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Fred Greetham, senior analyst from the Orange and Brown Report, straight ahead. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students, kindergarten through 12th grade, can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, Dave Frank from Cleveland. It's been a minute, brother. But I watch the show every day. Great as always. But I was watching the show on Monday with Dawand Jones. Now, if that don't light a fire under Jedrick Wills, but his job's in jeopardy. This kid can play, and he can both play swing tackle. We might see the best out of Jedrick Wills this year with that guy on deck. All right, great show as always, Dave. Love you, brother, and be safe.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, what do you think about that? We've heard Bill Callahan complimentary of the effort of Jedrick Wills earlier this week. Jones played well, but again, I don't want to get too crazy with a rookie in the Hall of Fame game.
Well, yeah, I mean, thanks for having me on, Dave. To me, the encouraging portion of this is that you've created competition. Not ready to hand over a job to Dawand Jones, but if he pushes, Jedrick Wills, the Browns will have some options. Bill Callahan also praised James Hudson. He's in his third year, and it's not necessarily Jedrick Wills. There's Jack Conklin, who's been a Pro Bowler, but he signed an extension. But they have to find guys to replace they have one of the most expensive offensive lines in the NFL. And as these guys move on in their age bracket and their salary contracts, you have to have replacements so you can have a seamless transition. So I was there yesterday. It's good timing. Bill Callahan talked about Jedrick Wills. I have a story on the front page right now of the OBR.com, and he was very complimentary of how Jones is progressing. He also was very complimentary about Jedrick Wills. But what he did say about Jedrick Wills, and I wrote in the story, is they want him to take the next step, and that is to get physical, finish plays, and you can read everything he said there. And so Wills has kind of a 2-year window. Normally they get their extension after the 4th year, which is this year, but they've already picked up his 5th-year option for $14.175 million, which is pretty expensive, but that's, a little less than the going rate for a left tackle. And then they have to make a decision. Is he the long-term answer? Do they give him a second contract after 2024, or do they let him walk? And it could give them great comfort if Dawand Jones shows this year and next year he can be that guy. He was a right tackle at Ohio State, and he really fell down to the 4th round of the Browns because there was talk that he wasn't that into football. He was more into basketball. Now, he said that was just something that he said as a kid. He always dreamed about playing the NBA. He said he still wants to play. Football's, what he does now. So we'll see. That will come out. But I've been impressed with him since the rookie minicamp when he seemed to really be out of shape, to the other night where he played the entire game out of necessity because they didn't really have any backups that were healthy. So we'll see how that all shakes out. But I think competition will yes, push Jedrick Wills, and that will make the Browns better.
Yeah, and the one thing Jones has, 6'8", 340, 360, whatever it is, you can't teach that. That's those are genetics, and they work on the side of Dawand Jones. I know you've also written an article, and I'm curious to take us through this. Elijah Moore wants to be great, and early in training camp, he's been the star. Take us through that and what you found out talking to Moore.
Well, I wrote that down in West Virginia. He is, at the beginning of training camp down there, Amari Cooper had a little, situation where he didn't practice like 4 days. And Marquise Goodwin with the blood clots still hasn't practiced. So Elijah Moore was on the field virtually inside, outside, in the slot, in the backfield. We saw that in minicamp, and it sure seems like they plan to use him everywhere, kind of, maybe like a Tyreek Hill. He's got the 4.3 speed. I think he feels that he was mischaracterized as a baby or a crybaby with the Jets, and he got suspended by the coach last year for a game or two, and they traded him to the Browns. Former second-round pick. I think he was a high second-round pick. And the Browns gave up a second-round pick in the 2023 draft for him. And I think he's really one of those guys that wants to resurrect his career, even though he's just getting started here with the Browns. And the Browns have made it look so far, up through even yesterday, that he plans to be very involved in the offense. And I'll give you a little hint. If you're in fantasy football, he might be a guy you could pick as a sleeper, because I think he's going to touch the ball a lot, if there's any indication from what I've seen, throughout training camp. So, he looks good. He's got the speed. He's got the quickness. And I just think, you hear that word, chip on their shoulder. He's a guy that feels that, he has been mischaracterized, and he wants to show the NFL and here in Cleveland with a new chance that he's the real deal. He's in his 3rd year. Yesterday, or it was 2 days ago, I guess, he broke loose on a one-on-one against Denzel Ward and made a great catch. It looked like Ward was going to make an interception. He was in great position, but Moore came down with the ball. We saw that in West Virginia too, where Ward looked like he had an interception, and Moore actually took the ball out of his hands. So he's got strong hands. He's not the biggest guy, but he's very quick, and he looks like, he's ready to be a big weapon for the Browns. And if any indication, what we've seen in training camp.
Yeah, the other thing about Moore, you mentioned he's a second-round pick. Jets go out and they sign Corey Davis as a free agent. Then they draft Garrett Wilson as the 10th overall pick, or I think it was the 10th, 8th, or whatever. First-round pick, high first-round pick ahead of him. So you certainly understand where he wants the chance to kind of resurrect things.
Well, and I will say this, Dave, that Aaron Rodgers comes in and he wants his own guys. They bring in Allen Lazard and guys he was comfortable with, made some other moves. Can't, look at the roster right off the top, but yeah, so that's what happens, Aaron Rodgers maybe trumps it, and it makes some, same way with Denzel Mims. He was another high pick that they moved on from as well.
So the running back room is now kind of thrown, there's a wrench into that, because it sounds like, we mentioned earlier, it sounds like Jerome Ford's going to miss weeks, potentially into the beginning of the season. Let's take a look at some free agents that are out there relative to positions the Browns may be interested in. So defensive line and the running back, because you've got now Isaiah Thomas, Alex Wright, and Jerome Ford kind of hobbled and banged up. So one guy out there, Shelby Harris, we know the Browns have had him in, haven't signed him. 31 years old, 8 years of NFL experience, 58 starts over the past 4 years. Another guy that's a defensive lineman, that's a veteran, Akeem Hicks, coming off a bit of a down year, 22 tackles, 1 sack, 11 games in his lone season with the Buccaneers a year ago. He's 33. This name pops up because of the Jerome Ford hamstring issue. 29-year-old J.D. McKissick, 672 rushing yards, 1,159 receiving yards, 7 total touchdowns, 35 games over the past 3 years for the Commanders. Fred, when you look at those names, do you think the Browns are inclined to bring in a veteran defensive tackle or running back?
Well, as I said, maybe on this show, but I've written that I felt like they were not going to make any move till training camp began, if they made any at all. And they went down to West Virginia, and that was actually what Andrew Berry said, not specifically about defensive tackles, but they wanted to see what they had. And then you saw immediately, like the day they got back from West Virginia, Shelby Harris came in. So that tells me that they are more so than just looking for a body. They are looking at, frontline starter type players. And I think that would be a tremendous upgrade at the position. Out of the 22 starters, I was suspect about Jordan Elliott. To me, I would say they had 21 of the 22. Jordan Elliott, they keep talking about, and he's listed as the starter. But because they asked him to take a pay cut and renegotiate his contract for this year and the last year of his deal, I think that they were ready to move on from him, that they might not be sold on him. They might be saying the right things, but that they're talking with Harris. Now, I've heard insiders with our group say that he is still looking at other options that he has, but that he or Akeem Hicks, a guy we talked about last year, the Ndamukong Suh, there's guys like that out there, and I think they're also waiting for their options to see how things are going to shake out. It usually comes down to money, but I like that they're looking to upgrade the position. And with Tristan Hill has been banged up with his hand, who knows exactly what's going to happen there. So I think they are looking, but they're not pushing the panic button just yet. Now with Alex Wright, Isaiah Thomas, defensive ends, they brought in a defensive end, but Maurice Hurst, I think has looked pretty good. He got poked in the eye, but he came back to practice. So right now, anything could happen there, but I think that it's a good thing that they're looking, and I think that they are interested in bringing in an upgrade, to go with Dalvin Tomlinson.
Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Now I'm going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll continue talking a little bit about the defense. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. We're talking with Fred Greetham, senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. Fred, I know you have written an article about Rodney McLeod. What's he bringing to this defense?
Well, I think the biggest thing that he has is 12 years experience in the league, but a wealth of experience with Jim Schwartz and in Jim Schwartz's scheme. He was on Jim Schwartz's defense in the Eagles when they won the Super Bowl. I think that was after the 18 season. And he's kind of like a coach on the field. But even at 33, last year with the Colts, PFF ranked him, I think, 7th or 8th overall best safety in the NFL. And so he can play at a high level. He's going to help Grant Delpit as well as Juan Thornhill and give them depth there so they could play three safeties and also be a coach on the field and helping line up guys. We've heard that from the guys we've talked to, know where they're supposed to be. And that's invaluable to the coaching staff, just a comfort, kind of a security blanket all the way around, that you have a guy at the end of at the backside of the defense that knows where they're supposed to be at all times. And we saw the breakdowns, particularly at safety last year, blown coverages, and I think that should really help eliminate a lot of that.
And as you mentioned, he's still playing like a starting safety, so you can see we'll see him on the field quite a bit, I would imagine. I know you've also written another article, and I'm curious about this. Ogbo Okoronkwo, what'd you find out about him? He's a guy it's intriguing. When they signed him, we thought it was a great signing. We thought, there you go, there's the guy opposite Myles Garrett. They go out and they tried for Zadarius Smith, so there's kind of a rotation there of really good edge rushers.
Yeah, I mean, I saw him and took some videos of him. He looked good, down there in West Virginia in the early going of camp. Gives the Browns really three top-end rushers. He didn't start till the middle of last year with the Texans, and I think he finished with like 5 sacks in his final 6 games, and I think it started when he sacked Deshaun Watson in his first game. And so he was graded out as, I think, one of the top 12 edge rushers in the second half of the season. So when you have Okoronkwo to go with Zadarius Smith and Myles Garrett, that really gives you a good rotation, of top 3 guys. Word just came out that Alex Wright had arthroscopic surgery, as well as Isaiah Thomas, and they're going to be out for some time. And so that just makes all the more important, those top 3 guys. But Okoronkwo, I think, is an ascending defensive end edge rusher. And before they got Smith, he was going to be the starter. And the nice thing is that Smith can move inside, and you can actually use all 3 of those guys in pass rush situations from the inside as well as the outside. So I think he really is versatile, and he's a young up-and-coming defensive end that the Browns are hoping, maybe he can be the long-term answer opposite Garrett if they can't keep Zadarius Smith around.
I know you got to see him in West Virginia. You got to see him out in Berea. How quick is he off the ball? It looked like he was a guy that, I don't want to say he's as quick as Garrett, but he's close.
Yeah, he is really quick. And, in the final practice, he went by the left tackle. I won't say who it was, but the left tackle kind of took exception. They got into a little skirmish, and it ended practice. It was like 10 minutes to go in their time down in West Virginia, and the coach made them run the whole 90 roster to get some of that energy out of them, and then called them together, and they had a kumbaya moment. But yeah, Okoronkwo, is quick off the ball. And if you look back, in that Texans game against the Browns, he really shot out of a cannon, and was on Watson, in a hurry. So I think when you have Garrett and Smith, they're going to have to pick who they're going to block. And if they double team, both Smith and Garrett, Okoronkwo could really have a field day. So I like what they've done. I like the depth, and he is extremely quick off the ball for sure.
Again, I know you've written another one. What do you think about another level, unlocking Myles Garrett, if you will? Is it possible that he ascends even more, or just your thoughts and take us through that article as well?
Well, I think that what Stefanski was talking about there, I got so many stories. We talked to so many, but that was also down in West Virginia on like the first day or second day, early in camp. But what he was talking about is maybe helping him get to the next level. And we put so much focus on sacks. He's had 16 in the last 2 years, which is great. But he's pretty much been the pass rush by himself, particularly from the defensive end position. Last year, the Browns had 20 sacks from defensive ends, and Garrett had 16 of them. He literally got no help. I mean, Clowney had 2, Isaiah Thomas had 1, and Chase Winovich had 1. So that wasn't much. And Zadarius Smith has been a double-digit machine in 3 of the last 4 years, and then you have Okoronkwo as well. I think that they're going to have to pick who they're going to double team or triple team. In the past, it's pretty much just been Garrett. So if Smith and Okoronkwo and even Dalvin Tomlinson and some of the guys inside can free up Garrett to maybe do some other things, he could even do bigger things. Maybe not so much even have more sacks, but maybe his attention on him draws, and allows Smith to have even a big year, or Okoronkwo to have a big year, or in the sack department, but all the way as a team. But I also think, disrupting the game, maybe he can, strip the ball from the quarterback like he did a couple years ago 3 or 4 times, and just be a game changer, game wrecker. And so I just think every player, they're trying to get him at a better, get him to the next level. And we've seen what Garrett's done. It's been phenomenal, but maybe he can even get to another level.
Fred Greetham, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Fred.
Always a pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Fred Greetham, make sure you check him out. Senior analyst for the Orange and Brown Report. The Greetham Angle, always really good stuff. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We will see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.